Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are and wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, a creative content right here in Chesterfield. I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. It's very rare for me to say the creative content writer part and then also introduce another creative content writer, but that's what I'm here to do because we're going to look back at the year that was 2023. To join me in that is creative content writer himself, Jim McConnell. Jim, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, Brad. How are you?
I am doing very well. Appreciate your time. We obviously are going to do what a lot of shows like this do at the end of a year. You look back and you think, gosh, what happened in January? Because it's funny because like I think everybody makes a joke. I feel like this is very common now, right? We're like, oh man, this year just flew by. But I feel like 2023 really did sort of fly by. And I don't know what that says, that I feel like I'm now the old man who makes the jokes about how the year flew by.
Yes, I was going to say that generally means you're old. Just as an old person myself, I will tell you, the years do fly by.
As a fellow old. So let me explain the assignment, so to speak, to use the vernacular of the youths. So the assignment today is essentially, we're not going to tell you about the best stories per se. We're not going to rank them or anything. We're just going to kind of go through a lot of the things that happened in 2023 and sort of talk a little bit about them. And one of the things that is, I was starting to work with Jim on the kind of information for the show, the thing that kind of stood out to both of us was the theme that kind of just sprung up, which is a lot of what happened in 2023 is an extension of things, maybe things that were planted in 2022 that are sort of kind of popping up out of the ground a little bit. So you can see things that happened initially in 2022 making real progress in 2023 throughout. So let's kind of dive in here, Jim. Is there one thing, I'm going to throw you a curveball right out of the gate. I'm going to ask him a question we have not prepared for. Is there something specifically about 2023 that stands out the most to you when you think about the year that was?
Well, I never really was good at hitting the curveball, but I'm going to park this one because I'm a pro.
That's right. They say if you don't want to answer the question, you always answer another question you actually do want to answer, right?
Right, and I'll do what people used to do to me when I was a reporter. That's an excellent question, Brad. Whenever I used to hear that, I was like, they're stalling. They don't want to answer the question. That's why they're complimenting my question. But no, that is an excellent question. And I think I would just sort of sum it up by saying this is just a very active time. There is just so much happening that is beneficial while the average person goes about their day and doesn't think about it or maybe even see it or notice it unless it's a road project.
Right. And there were several of those.
There are a lot of those.
We'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, but just there's a lot going on that's going to end up being really good for the public here. And I think it's just the pace of progress. I mean, it really is sort of staggering the numbers, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point.
Yeah. Now, in terms of, I guess we also should give people an idea of why you're here, right? I mean, you're not just, I mean, you come and talk football with me, right? And that's not to say that we wouldn't, have Jim on the podcast for other reasons, but the biggest reason why you're on the podcast is because you do run a little thing called Chesterfield On Point. You want to tell the good folks about Chesterfield On Point?
Sure. It is an award-winning blog.
That's right. Oh.
See, I wanted to make sure that I hit that point because we like to win awards.
It's usually a good thing if you can have it happen.
Absolutely. And then after we win them, we like to tell people that we've won them. Like it's
how else are they going to find out?
Really, it's
what we do.
We're the communicators. Now, Chesterfield On Point is sort of like the place where if you want to know about something that you can't really get at in 30 seconds or it's a little bit more in-depth topic, budget, infrastructure, it's just going to allow you to kind of delve a little deeper if you want to do that.
Yep. And the reason why Jim is here is because as kind of like our resident sort of newsman, right? Jim is kind of tasked with telling a lot of really involved stories, some like really meaty stuff on the blog. And I thought that would be the perfect kind of hook for a show like this where we're trying to look at all of those different things as we look back on the stories that stand out to us, or the standout stories, if you will, of 2023. Now, economic development, obviously, because of what 2022 was, and having just come off the heels of State of the County, this is very fresh sort of in my own mind. And for those of you who haven't seen it yet, make sure you check it out. It will be linked in the podcast app of choice or on our YouTube channel as well. the thing that really stood out to me in hearing Garrett talk during the State of the County and kind of looking back on, again, this theme of things that started in 2022 and then have really come to fruition or made progress or whatever in 2023. Think about Spring Rock Green was purchased in 2022. Now you've got Spring Line in District 60, the groundbreaking this year, the topping out this year, the Lego announcement, obviously huge news in 2022. Now you've got not only had a groundbreaking there, but you've also got some kits that are actually under Christmas trees this holiday season. There's lots of stuff, it feels like, on the economic development front that kind of clicks into this place. Same thing with, sports tourism, right? J.C. Poma, a newly kind of developed department in 2022, now really kind of taking, kind of coming to its own a lot in terms of the building out sort of the vision for what visitation and entertainment, sports tourism, what that really means for Chesterfield, what it means for the long-term sort of plan. So it's sort of, as we look back on the State of the County and then look back deeper into 2023, one of the things that stood out to me was just the progress made on the variety of these different fronts.
No, absolutely. And the thing about economic development is when you have a year like Chesterfield had in 22, like you announce Lego.
Yeah.
It's $1 billion project, right?
Right.
Billion with a B.
Right.
It's sort of like, I think Garrett said, like, it's a bolt out of the blue and people are like, well, that'll never happen again.
Right.
And then you build on it with almost $800 million more.
Right.
Like, it's sort of like, well, that wasn't a fluke, folks.
Right.
Like, This is where things are going.
Right.
And it sort of reinforces, I think, the purposefulness, if that's a word,
right,
of really trying to diversify our economy.
Right.
And
not only that, but then think about the success they've had in that endeavor, right? This is the most jobs Chesterfield's ever had, the highest weekly rate wage that Chesterfield's ever had, the most number of businesses Chesterfield's ever had. You just think about it, essentially what Garrett said, I believe, and I think I'm getting this quote right in my mind's eye, the idea that like every way that they can track it, they've broken whatever that record is. And to do that on the heels of 2022, again, that's kind of a theme here, right? So you think about sort of the pace of even for schools, right? Ms. Coker was up during the State of the County talking about all the different projects that are now in the pipeline. Well, a lot of that came because of the bond facilities plan from 2022 that the county residents passed overwhelmingly. And so now you're starting to see a lot of that, right, with the new infrastructure in place from the school sides as well.
No question. And this is why you're a pro, Brad, because like you came up with this theme and it really was like, it does make a lot of sense when you think about it. The foundation for all of this stuff was laid, and then you sort of, the people notice it and they go, okay, well, I voted on a bond referendum.
Right.
And then they go away for a while and they don't maybe engage fully on the fact that, yeah, now those schools are happening. Like
right.
In the coming years, there will be thousands of additional seats. I think the number is between 6,000 and 8,000 or 10,000 new seats.
Yep.
Like
and that's just what's actually identified right now. There are some other schools that are in the pipeline that have not yet, found their funding source, but they're there too. And so it's kind of a long-term, long-range view. And like you said, there's so much in the works that you're right. People don't see on a day-to-day basis. But that knowing that it's there, it had to have, it sprung up from someplace. And a lot of that seems to have come in a variety of these different sort of topics from 2022.
Yep, absolutely. And just in terms of the schools too, it's having a better idea. Like we've got a lot better idea, I think, now of where the seats need to be. Mm-hmm. And where to build them. Mm-hmm. And I think just having a lot more data-driven process
right.
of where all of this stuff needs to happen so that it's not, because it's not as simple as just building a school.
Right.
A new high school is over $100 million.
It's a substantial amount of money and a substantial investment, not just by the locality, but also for, by the citizenry, right? Everybody has to sort of be on the same page when it comes to a lot of these things. And what I also found interesting in looking back at 2022 and along these same sort of lines, right, is that the idea that, you mentioned sort of the amount of investment and the number of schools and the bond facilities plan, but the county actually saved a significant amount of money in terms of those bonds because of the AAA bond rating, and goes back to sort of like that from the budget time, that power of right? To do all of these different things and be able to have a historic tax rebate at the same time in June. I think that sort of really underscores just, the amount of, again, things that people might not see on a day-to-day basis, but things that are always kind of constantly happening. And one of the things that I think really stands out about this is that Chesterfield was able to do a lot of these things, will be able to do a lot of these things, and to do it at a lower price because of that bond rate. And I think that's a significant part of the big picture when I look back at 2023.
No doubt. And I've lived here 30 years, and the great part about being a resident, even before I was an employee, is that you have the luxury of knowing the people who are managing your organization, your county, are doing a good job, and they're paying attention to things like bond ratings. Some localities don't pay that close attention to this. Right. And then when it comes time to borrow money, they find out what happens. Like if you have a bad credit rating in your, household or whatever, you go to try to borrow some money, and the lender is like, good luck with that.
Right.
So again, it's just something that it doesn't really happen, but it comes from sound management. Right. And just people who are paying attention to these things so that when it comes time to borrow money for a school, they don't get they don't get laughed out of the room. They get, yes, we will give you our best rates.
Right.
And that saves millions of
dollars. That's the thing. And that, I think when you really kind of think about, it costs a lot of money to build a school, but when you can also, in the process of building that school, which you desperately need, you look at the landscape and you understand this is something that has to happen. But then to be able to do the thing that has to happen and save substantially because of, the track record and that kind of thing. And in addition to that, in terms of infrastructure in general, right? Think about all the different road projects. And we've talked about a number of them throughout the year, especially on the blog, right? You got Otterdale Road, you got Nash Road, you got 10, you got Woolridge. There's the phase 1 of Powhite, which, talk about historic, right? The idea that the county is going to step in and try to do what it can to make that dotted line a reality. Those infrastructure projects, again, significant investment, significant time frames in a lot of these situations. But what it means for people, ask the folks on Otterdale Road, right? That thing came in a month early, and that's not something that typically happens. And in the long term, that's going to make not only things safer, but it's going to make things a lot easier for traffic in that area. And that's something that's, we've seen time and again throughout all these different projects.
It is. And $787 million of road projects underway.
Yeah.
Like, stop and think about that. Like, let's all take a moment to think. $787 million.
And you need to do that because this is the second largest road network in the Commonwealth.
It is.
I mean, and people, a lot of folks, maybe you kind of, we all exist in our little area, right? But Chesterfield is just a vast county. And the amount of roads in this county follow that suit. It's crazy the amount of road projects that would need to be sort of in that pipeline in order to continue to, not only for safety purposes, but also for traffic and the sort of dealing with the way that population just sort of flows. And we know that Chesterfield continues to grow. We know people love the opportunity that they find here, which is one of the reasons why that State of the County, again, I don't mean to reference it so much, but live, learn, work, and play. I mean, it really did a nice job of encapsulating the totality of circumstances that bring people here.
It really did, and it does. And when you think about quality of life, I don't think anybody who's ever lived in a suburb equates anything quite as much to quality of life as being able to get on a road and go somewhere and not have to sit in traffic.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those small things that adds up over time, right? In the moment, this little trip to the grocery store, that trip to your kid's school, this trip out of town, coming back home, little bit, they all stack, right? And so the more opportunity for you to not spend time in the car, to not spend time in any sort of traffic, and obviously to do it safely matters a substantial amount. In terms of safety too, one of the things that, as I look back on 2023, the ribbon cutting at the new Fleet Services building, I mean, I'm not saying that that I walked in and thought, man, I would love to work on buses and fire trucks. But it looked, I mean, think about sort of the amount of space that facility has, the opportunities that opens up, not just for those who work there, but in terms of the entire fleet across the county. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the way that Chesterfield does things in terms of efficiency, that building is going to make a big difference. And speaking of efficiency, the solar, right, on the various county buildings, and that's something that's going to, that might be something we talk about, in a future podcast, right, where we're like, oh, this is a seed that was planted in 2023 and continues to grow, because that was something too. The amount of opportunity that is there to be more efficient, to be even better stewards, and to capitalize on all the different county facilities where that's an option. It really kind of speaks to kind of the overall sort of mindset, if you will, of the entire organization.
It really does. And when you think about an upfront investment, fleet services, again, is as behind the scenes as we are, like probably even more so. Out of sight, out of mind, no one really thinks like, oh, wow, I can't wait to go see that fleet services building. But the upfront investment that you make in something that you then reap benefits of it for years to come,
right?
That's what efficient organizations do. That's what well-managed organizations do.
Yeah.
Solar, the environmental sort of investments that this county's made in sort of stewardship and the various ways we're doing it,
right?
It makes incremental sort of impacts that people don't notice, but they are there, and they add up over years and years and years and years. And then you look one day and you're going to be like, oh, wow, all of our county buildings have and school buildings have solar on them.
And the amount
when did that happen?
Yeah, right. And the amount of not just energy that they're going to be able to offset, but what that means not just for the environment, but also for the bottom line. I think too, we're talking about ribbon cuttings. Solar event was a flip of the switch. It feels like, for those of us in communications and media, we cover these types of events. Jim's always out there, writing blogs about, ribbon cuttings and opening of this and that. And one of the things I was thinking about was just think about the number of things that got opened, like the Bueller Recreation Center and the cricket pitch, like the stuff that happened throughout the year, and how much there is for people to do. And I'm not even trying to go on the back, ride the coattails of the play theme here from the state of the county. I'm just thinking about it just in general, the amount of stuff there was that got covered on the blog this year, that got covered on the podcast this year, because stuff was happening, right? Fleet, we were there. I know the blog covered a bunch of them as well. There's a lot of, again, kind of that extension of investment and we can think about it as a greater Chesterfield, but also there's specific communities, right? Specific, the smaller sort of groups, the smaller sort of focus. And Buell is a great example of that, right? Where we've had a number of these throughout the year where people are going to be able to use these facilities to do things they haven't been able to do. And I'm not going to mention pickleball, but I'm going to mention pickleball because I feel like every time I turn around, there's more pickleball. And it's but that's a great example of, responding to what what people in communities are looking for. And I think that's across the board all year long.
And then investing in your people, investing in your communities. Cricket, I've never played it. I've watched it. It looks, talk about trying to hit a curveball. How about stand in front of this thing and someone's going to wing this ball at you at 200 miles an hour and you have to hit it?
Is it 200 miles an hour?
It's probably not,
it's
but
probably
it
not,
kind of looks like it because they just wing that ball.
I felt like I had to keep you honest. There was 200 miles an hour sounds fast.
It's really fast. I mean, it's
if you have feedback on that, feel free to send it to Jim.
I might have exaggerated a little bit. Let's just say being the batter, it's sort of scary looking.
Yeah,
I
no doubt.
But
no doubt.
No, a lot of people play it. Dr. Casey and I were sort of going back and forth. It's the second most
played
frequented spectator sport in the entire world,
right up there
behind
with football.
Football,
not the American version.
Yes,
though we love that. Speaking of football, dude, we had. Oh man, that was a perfect segue. We could not have scripted that any better if we tried.
Pro. Yeah,
dude, having you on the podcast to talk high school football this year was so fun. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have to do it forever because not only because we enjoyed it. I just want the good people out there to know that while Jim has so much love and respect for the blog, let me just tell you what, doing those podcasts about high school football, he was like, every day we did one of those, dude was on like cloud 9 the entire day.
No lie.
He was so excited.
It is my favorite thing.
So even though the blog, yes, he very much loves the blog, he really loves the podcast more, let's be honest. But no, just the opportunity to have you on the show, talk about football, to branch the show out a little bit. And as kind of we look back a little bit sort of on, not just on what 2023 had, but also kind of where it's taken us, right? So like, for example, the election happens in November. Here soon, that means a new board. What that means is, every year I like to catch up with the various members of the Board of Supervisors. I'll have a new representative to speak with this year. And that obviously will mean, it's a new year, new board, new opportunities and stuff. And there's a lot obviously ahead in 2024. Let's get out here on this. We'll both tackle this one. What are some of the big things for the blog in 2023? What are some of your favorite stories to have written? And is there anything specifically you're looking forward to in 2024?
Well, strangely enough, I think one of my favorite things to have written, I just literally finished and posted, and it was about our recycling program. Strangely enough, this is going to sound like something maybe a little odd and a little, too in the weeds for people. that would be my favorite thing for, but it just, we put in a new recycling program, and it's working. Mm-hmm. And the data, again, we're not just sort of pulling this out of thin air. Like, there's data. We're tracking this stuff.
Right.
And it's important. Again, going back to environmental stewardship, it's important, and we're paying attention to how much of stuff we're keeping out of landfills. And to me, when you have data and you can convey it to people in a very sort of straightforward way, we're not making this up. We're not spinning it. This is just what the data is.
Right.
That to me is very meaningful, and a way to sort of go into 2024 with some very positive momentum, saying we're making an impact. It's tangible.
Right.
It is literally, and it's super important. We've got kids. Mm-hmm. I'd like to leave the planet in pretty good shape.
It's fair. Yeah. In terms of that, for me, obviously I mentioned Fleet a little while ago. Was such a joy to work with Craig and all of his folks there. I had James Jackson on the show earlier in the year, a former NASA veteran. Just kind of cool to think about a way that Chesterfield played a role in the moon landing. I mean,
he was incredible.
He really was. Speaking of incredible, I really enjoyed Tamika Stevens from Wheel of Fortune. That was one of those chances to get the community sort of here. I mean, we were at the Perkinson Center. We did the, we did the high school football podcast. And I also liked the opportunity too, to get out to more departments, right? We had several other folks around the organization. We had libraries, we have the Office on Aging, we had tourism, obviously with JC, the opportunity to bring more people, behind the mic, no pun intended. Cause there's just so much good that's being done throughout the organization. So it was a lot of fun in 2023 to do that, to branch out a little bit. And I look forward to doing a little bit more of that in 2024, which I'm sure you'll do on the blog as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not for nothing, but like, you get to have Carrie Brockwell, you get to talk to the guy from NASA, you get the Wheel of Fortune lady. And, it seems like you're having a lot of fun. And so I'm sort of a little jealous. Can't lie. I don't get to write about any of those people, but I'm telling you right now that NASA...
it wasn't like those weren't opportunities for you in meetings. Come on now.
I mean, the NASA guy is going in the blog in 2024. I'm telling you that much.
Mr. Jackson, if you're listening,
yes.
But Jim will be calling.
Await my call.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us about 2023, some of the standout things that stood out to us. The standout things that stood out to us. Now, that's a tongue twister right there. But you can definitely give Jim's work a look, Chesterfield.gov/blog for the Chesterfield On Point blog. Jim, thank you very much for coming back on the show. I guess, maybe we'll figure out some excuse to have you back on between now and football season. But if not, if it's that long, we'll see you then.
All right.
Make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's @ChesterfieldVA, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia, all in word. And on Facebook, you can check our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that you get your shows. And if you're so inclined to give us a rating or review, we'd greatly appreciate it. As always, a video version of our show is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website, Chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit feedback anytime, make suggestions, or just reach out to us. You can watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. And lastly, you can check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us to find a number of other ways to connect with Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent Media Services for all they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So, from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day and a part of your year. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care. From blogs to podcasts, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Newsletters to alerts, social media, the latest community news.
Welcome to the latest installment of This Week in Chesterfield.
How to get in touch, and everything in between. If you want to know about Chesterfield County, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us. Connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.